The following is presented as an entertainment program emphasizing folklore. It is not intended as legal or medical advice in any way and should not be used to replace the advice of legal or medical professionals. New World Witchery is a Patreon-supported podcast. This episode is sponsored in part by listener Athena Beth. We are ever so grateful for your support and are sending you a box of magical whiteboard markers to use for all of your enchanted chalk talk needs.
If you'd like to become a patron and help support the show while also getting some great perks, please visit www.patreon.com/newworldwitchery, where you can pledge $1 a month or whatever you can to help us buy some magical erasers to help deal with the many monsters and dragons that someone has been drawing all over the board lately, resulting in an awful lot of devoured and finished homework assignments. And thanks to all of our listeners. Are you looking for magic? Maybe magic that lives right where you do?
If so, join us aboard our broomsticks and ride with us from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Yukon to the Yucatan, and find magic that's right outside your front door or just off of Route 66.
Whether you're in the Windy City or the Crescent City, the city that never sleeps, or the city of brotherly love, we've got enchantment for you.
I'm Cory.
And I'm Lane, and this is New World Witchery.
We are clocking in and casting spells with professional witchery.
That means it's time to look at folk magic on the job and folk magic as a job.
Hi, Lane.
Hello.
Welcome back. How have you been? How's things?
Things are hectic, but good for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what has happened? Just our AC went out. That
I was going to say, I think your HVAC unit was dead for a minute there.
Yeah, we are very, very lucky that we have two, one for upstairs, one for downstairs. And so our upstairs one, kind of saved us.
Mm.
I mean, it didn't, it's not big enough to, cool the whole house, but when we needed to go upstairs to cool off, we could. And
good.
Slept up here a couple nights. Yeah, but overall, it's fixed. We're good. It just sucked in the moment on top of not having our bathroom fully completed yet. But insurance just approved the glass. So the shower is the last thing to be done. And I think we'll be good. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Have you considered the possibility that the first floor of your house is in fact possessed?
I haven't, but now that you say it.
Just saying, it all seems to be on that floor. Which, as I recall, is also mostly where the cats are. So, cats are demons? Maybe?
Yeah. Causation does equal, or correlation does equal
causation.
causation.
Yes.
Damn it.
We've done the science. We're good. Yeah. I'm good. Good.
What about you? How are you? How are things?
I'm doing well. I've got classes about to start up again for my semester, so I have been kind of cranking stuff on that end, making sure all my, ducks are in a row for it. We're going to be doing something fun since several of us who teach things like Gothic Lit and ghost stories as literature, and I do the monsters and literature course and things like that. At the end of the semester, we're going to have a showcase, a student showcase, where we feature a lot of different student projects that are done in our classes that are all kind of related to this sort of spooky theme, which I'm really excited about this semester.
Ooh,
so yeah.
That sounds fun.
Indeed. I am excited.
Very in the mood for spooky stuff. I'm ready for Halloween. I've already got a few decorations out because I bought them, and I'm not putting them up just to drag them back out. So I've got the Headless Horseman statue in front of my stairs, right when you walk in the door. It's awesome. I love it.
I mean, you've been in my house and you know that it's kind of always at least low-key Halloween simmering.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely already planning out my exterior for the Halloween. It was funny because it was unholy hot 2 weeks ago, maybe even just up to a week ago. It was pretty, sweltering. And then over the weekend, it just sort of flipped. And it's just one of those things where it was the faintest of cool breezes and break out the sweaters and get out the pumpkin spice latte, ma. Fall's here, which is not true because where we live, it will likely heat back up again before fall really hits. But it's nice to have this little breath of it.
That's true. That is very
I'm
true.
looking forward to it. Plus, I'm never not watching spooky movies and I'm never not in a Halloween mood. So that works great.
Yeah. We're going to be going to see Romulus soon, you and I.
We are, as kind of a early, well, not even really early, but almost time for your birthday celebration. We're going to go see I mean, anybody who's listened to us for a long time knows that you and I are huge fans of Alien and Aliens. I was going to say the Alien franchise, but let's be real. We're fans of those two specific movies.
Yes. And Sigourney Weaver. She can do no wrong in my eyes. So I'm very excited to see it and see it with you. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. So looking forward to it. But we've got some work to do before we get to that, which is good because our topic tonight is work, magical occupations, jobs, etc.
If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That's so not true, but
not true.
That is to say that this does not feel like work very much to me. So I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Indeed, yes. And we should say we have covered magical work, magical jobs, magical occupation specifically.
How long ago was that,
Cory? You get the notes too, I see. The first time we covered it was episode 30 in 2011, 13 years hence. And then
you shut your whore mouth.
And then we revisited nigh a decade ago in 2015.
Oh my God.
In episode 81. So we have hit this before, but there's a very good chance that there are people who are listening now who have not heard some of those episodes. So, if you want to go back, all the episodes, by the way, are on our website. We know that some of the podcatchers don't catch all of our episodes running all the way back to, the first one and everything like that. But all the episodes are
like 15 years ago.
Because because the internet didn't know what it was made of then. Like it was held together by the four humors at that point. And so now we've got all of our episodes. They are all archived on our website. You can find all them. We put up a lot of them on YouTube as just kind of audio only tracks. So that if you want to go listen to some of our older ones, they're there too. But we also know it's been a while since we've talked about this. And we're going to talk about some stuff that's a little different tonight, too. When we've talked about job work before, we've talked a little bit about how to get a job, but just a little bit about that. And then we've talked a lot about, because Judika Elish has this amazing book on, I think it was the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, that had this awesome section that was all about in fairy tales, here's all these jobs that wind up associated with magic, like being a miller or being a tailor and things like that. And so we kind of unpacked that previously. But we're going to talk more about, I think, some specific fields and some of the magic that comes out of those specific fields. So just little folk spells, little folk beliefs that are associated with really specific jobs, just to kind of get people introduced to this concept of what we call occupational folklore. So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about the idea of doing magic professionally, like as a job. So lots of stuff to cover. So.
Yeah, that is a lot. So let's jump into it then, I guess.
All right. Well, great. So really, I guess we start off with magic that has to do with getting a job. And you've talked a little bit before about doing a spell for your husband that was to help him find a job, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done several. The main one that I have talked about, and I guess people would remember that I've brought up a few times, is like the candle spell that I did like when we were first kind of out of college. Yes, it has been that long, but I do remember it really well. I don't know why, like certain, things I just like enter my brain and then leave it, and other things are just cemented. But yeah, I lit a bunch of different colors for, various things. And obviously they can be kind of what you need them to be. For me, I think it was obviously like green for, prosperity and money. And then there was also something for friendship, because, you want to have like a good relationship with your coworkers. And then there was something for travel, because there was going to be some commuting involved, and, just a few things like that. And you can kind of tailor it how you need to, or just use all white, or all black, or all green, however you need to do it. But I know that I put them in each candle is like the point of a star, basically, and then lit them in what I know to be as an invoking pentagram, which is starting at the lower left-hand corner, I believe.
Your way kind of up, down, around, kind of, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. So that was what I did. And I feel like there were a couple other things that I sort of added to it, but that was the main gist of it. And then he had sort of a little, I don't remember what I called it at the time. Just like a little mojo bag, I guess. But not real. That's not really what it was. I don't know.
It's more like a charm bag.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And he carried that with him until it literally disintegrated. And now it's in his little what are those things called? Like valets, or that, like the little things that men have on their like side tables or dressers or whatnot, carry. coins and things of that nature. And so, yeah, they've stayed there, but it was an old coin that he had it was a bicentennial coin, maybe.
Mm.
So it was, like it was kind of a special quarter. It wasn't one that was just like your everyday one that you always see. So yeah, that's what I remember about it. It was quite successful, but I've also done something as simple as having him rub Crown of Success oil that you and I made together with our own, recipe and everything. And I've always found that to be really successful as well whenever I've had the occasion to use that. So
yeah, no, it's a good old, actually, I've been doing some Crown of Success. I probably shouldn't talk too much about it because it's still a spelling process, but I have been using some Crown of Success stuff in some work I'm doing, but I didn't have time or opportunity to make the oil from scratch this time. So I went to buying it from one of our local shops. Shout out to Aroma G's, by the way. And so, yeah, Crown of Success is definitely something I turn to when I'm looking for like success in employment or success in a career trajectory, things like that, for sure. Yeah. And that's very effective. And wasn't there a carnelian involved in this somewhere for yours?
No, there were like a couple different stones, but no, one was like a tiger's eye, just for kind of like, bravery and not aggressiveness, but just, like you don't want like a wilting flower in a job position, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was kind of what that was for.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just thinking that was something that he kind of carried around a little bit after the fact. Like he had that stone that he kind of carried with him. So, but yeah, so that's one that you've done before, and you've done magic on the job as well. That was actually when we talked about hex magic. We talked about dealing with a not great boss and some work we had to do to help gentle her down some.
Yeah. Who knows if it worked or not, but here's hoping for the next person.
Yeah. So there's that too. And I think previously we've talked about the idea of like, even just like, I think when we were doing like digital spell work at one point, we talked about the idea of like embedding sigils and resumes and stuff like that too. And I've done that a few times with fairly limited results, if I'm being honest, although I did get the current position I have after doing some work like that. And, so it is nice to have that. And I generally try to, keep a bay leaf handy and dressed and charged and everything like that, just to sort of keep things going. And we should also say, like, it doesn't have to be just a job of, punching the clock kind of a job either. It can be like career goals. So for both of us, we both have been doing writing, right? And we wrote a book together. And I'm curious, I definitely do work while I'm writing to kind of help my writing find success or find help me find the stride I need to accomplish things with it. Did you wind up doing anything like that while we were writing together?
Yeah, definitely. Like I would I would light a particular type of incense that I don't know, like I hadn't lit it in a while. I hadn't really smelled it in a while. So I was hoping that it would kind of trigger like, this is your writing time. This is the time that I don't know, just like scent can be such a huge trigger for memory. And so I was hoping it would be like, okay, this is here's your sign that it is time to write, and kind of help me get into that headspace.
Yeah. Did you feel like it worked pretty well?
I do. Yeah. I would definitely use it again for like a big project like that.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing, I think I've talked about this before too, one thing I tend to do, I actually need to do this for our book. I tend to take a copy of, any books that I've written, and I'll turn it into kind of a talismanic offering where I basically, it's not that I destroy the book, but I make it so that it's unavailable. It's basically unusable. And it becomes this sort of like perpetual boost for the book. So the book is not necessarily even about boosting sales, but it's finding its audience more than anything like that.
Okay. Neat.
So I think I need to do that. I suppose I should ask your permission. This is something we both wrote.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I might want to be involved in it, but
fair enough. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe
I'm
that's
sure
why
you'd be okay with that. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be a good little like extra episode. We haven't done like something like that in a long time, where we have done something practical and then we come on, to record and talk about it.
Yeah, we should do that. That'd be a really good use, and kind of ties into this idea of doing things that sort of boost your and again, we're talking about job-based magic, but we're really talking about things that help you achieve these kind of like, career goals or life goals that are related to the work that you do. It doesn't necessarily have to be, again, like getting a job where you punch the clock, which it can be that, absolutely. And sometimes it's about, having a steady income, but sometimes it's also about like finding meaningful work and things like that. And some people are, they have a job, but they don't like the job they have and they want to go find something that means something to them. So good. In terms of get a job stuff, I mean, you haven't really necessarily needed to do anything recently for that, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so that's not been something kind of on your radar. Honestly, one of the things that I've done more with recently in the past couple of years was doing job spells that involved playing cards, where I would kind of lay playing cards out in specific ways and then do spells kind of on top of those. And then that kind of becomes like the playing cards kind of become a sigil system that I use to sort of continue to boost the magical work. So
that's really cool. So like, let me just throw out something that I would think of, and you can kind of correct or not based on how you do it. Obviously, this is kind of personal. So I would think like you would start with something like the king of, I don't know, hearts, or maybe since it was more business related, you would do like clubs or something, or diamonds. Excellent. Even.
Well, clubs, okay. Yeah, clubs for sure. I've done that. You're hitting exactly one that I've done. So yes, clubs.
And then I would assume you would do something kind of money based. I'm not sure on the number that you would use because I don't have the associations quite as well as you do, but
sure. Yeah, no, I get that.
I would say something with diamonds for the money, or maybe you would just stick with clubs because again, that's like business. But yeah, what would you do?
You were dead on with the clubs thing. Yeah, no, the one I do, and you're not wrong. Like I think maybe in the revised edition of 54 Devils, I walk through a version that has the clubs and the diamonds. I can't remember if I did that one there or not, but that would be like a king of clubs with a 10 of diamonds, right? For the sort of treasure chest. Like, so this is the sort of finding employment, because the king becomes this sort of, it basically represents kind of a boss character, but it's also can be this kind of like this sort of wise mentor, which becomes kind of the field itself that you're looking for, right? So like you want to be mentored in this particular field, but you also want it to be lucrative. So those two things could work together. But what I did was king of clubs, 8 of clubs, which I don't know if you remember what the 8s are associated with. Do you happen to remember that? I don't want to put you in like a painted situation here.
Painted? Yeah, I don't.
Okay. So 8's usually having to do with talk or conversation. So that's shop talk. So the way I think of it is like shop talk, business talk. So interview, right? So looking for like interviews. And then the 2 of clubs, which, as I read them, tends to be a handshake or an exchange. So it's basically like getting job offers, right? So, finding the right boss / career, being able to get your foot in the door for an interview, and then making sure that you get the offer, the handshake, right? So those things were what I used to create my working space. And then I used the symbols for each of those to create a sigil that I would, make transparent, but put onto like resumes and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, it was a very, very rewarding process, at least mentally. But that being said, like, it's not like I had job offers like pouring in, but I did, find my way to a place that I think is a good fit for me for right now. So
yeah, and that's all you can ask, I guess.
Exactly. So yeah. What about, when you're actually at a job, have you ever done anything like to try to like magically boost so that you like maybe get the schedule you want or a raise that you need or anything like that?
Surprisingly, I don't think I have, although there would have been, plenty of opportunity. I don't know. Sometimes I just forget that I'm a witch.
I feel you on that. Yeah, no, it's very easy to be like, gosh, I wish there was something I could do about this. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, I know, let's try magic. Like, if it doesn't like work that way. So, yeah, I've done a few things. I had not a boss in the sense of like the, company owner kind of a thing. But at one point I had a sort of a person I was a direct report to. He's a wonderful guy. I really enjoyed working with him, but I knew I was going to need a raise. And this was around the time I'd had my first child, and I knew I was going to need a raise in order to, have a child.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I did was there's a charm that you can do where you use basically shredded up newspaper and tobacco. And this comes out of Southern Conjure and to some extent Hoodoo as well. And you use that. And then I also added in a little bit of allspice because allspice sort of inspires that sort of like jovial, convivial business atmosphere kind of a thing, right? So it's good for that.
Like two businessmen sitting together,
pipes and brandy, blah, blah.
Chewing tobacco. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Or just that sort of sense of like, have you ever like walked into a shop where like, the shopkeeper just hasn't, like, they don't feel like they're trying to sell you anything. They just seem like they're interested in helping you find what you need. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of a vibe. So
love it.
So it was that. And I sprinkled that around the chair, let that sit for a little bit, and then went back in and kind of vacuumed it up after letting it sort of marinate the area a little bit and let it a little bit hidden as well, just to kind of keep the energy there. But it worked. I got the raise, so that was really useful. Yeah. And then one thing I did, and this isn't exactly a spell, but I wanted to throw this in here because I think this kind of illustrates this idea of magic that isn't done specifically as a sort of like, I'm going to do a spell, but as a sort of like, was struck by an idea. The idea seemed weirdly, like it seemed weird, but magical. And it had a long lasting effect. And so I'm really, really, it's the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, that's magic, but it's the kind of magic that you didn't set out to do. It just happened. Right. And this was, if you've ever heard of the concept of like the 1,000 paper cranes, right? So there's a specific day every year where people will fold 1,000 paper cranes in Japan as a sort of symbolizing peace. And it's in remembrance of the people who were destroyed by the atomic bomb, right? Uh-huh. And so I've always really loved paper cranes. I've always kind of folded them. And I love the idea of like just folding a lot of them. Have you ever been out? You've been out to eat with me, right? Uh-huh. And you know that like when they bring those little paper wrappers on the napkins and stuff, yes. I will like break them apart and start turning them into cranes.
Yes.
I think you even have a few.
I have one somewhere around here. Yeah.
So I had this boss who I knew I was going to be leaving the company not too distant future. And I had a really good rapport with this boss. She was really wonderful. And I found this old bird cage that was like a thrift store bird cage kind of a thing. And so I folded, it wasn't 1,000, but it was like a little over 100 paper cranes, each one with a little quote or piece of advice just on the inside of the paper crane. And I gave that to her. And one, I've never seen somebody get so teary so quick, but she loved this idea. And then I kept getting communication with her over the years as she would open these things, because she didn't open them all at once. She would use it then basically be like, I'm having a rough day and I need some advice. Cory's not here. And so she'd open it up and it would be like I was there kind of sitting with her and talking. So, mm-hmm. And so for years and years and years, I kept up a report. Now, does that necessarily mean that like, money is flowing infinitely my way? No, but it was a good like boost that was related to the work I was doing. And I feel like it kind of put something good out there into the world. And then she's gone on to I think it kind of helped her with some business things that she did afterwards too. So, and who knows?
That's fantastic.
The lingering effect will be. Maybe it'll come back around someday. I don't know. So
yeah, I like to think so.
Yeah, but whatever the case, I enjoyed it. So
yeah, and that's all that matters. That's great.
But yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, oh, there's a wee bit of whimsy in that, isn't there?
Yeah, so. I would like you to teach me how to make those actually, because I don't know how. Yeah,
yeah, they're super super easy. So
I'm sure. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, then, what next?
That's kind of pursuing a job, boosting yourself in a job. We have this whole list of folklore that has to do with really specific jobs. And I should say I did a post on our website about a series of different job-based folklore for different specific jobs. It all kind of started off with our friend Kathleen Borealis, who runs the Borealis Meditation podcast, which is Geology for Pagans. If people are interested, I highly recommend that. And she had posted something on, I think this was Instagram, where there was a meme that basically, it was two people kind of talking back and forth, this kind of like Reddit memes, right? Well, one person says, some people try to tell me that scientists are paragons of rationality, and I have to break it to them that I work at a lab that didn't have at least, I have yet to work in a lab that didn't have at least one weird secret shrine in it.
Right. They're so superstitious.
Yeah. And so and then it goes into like new guy. Why is all this equipment in the room covered in toys? It's me. Don't touch those. New guy. Me. They need the toys to function. They don't all have the toys. They get jealous. And so it got into this idea, like I talked about, like rubber duck coating and like having these little things that aren't logical or reasonable, but do function. I mean, the rubber duck does have a function. It's so you can explain your code line by line to it, which helps you find problems. But, people do all this stuff on the job. It's very folkloric.
Yes.
So I thought we would kind of talk a little bit about that. And I found a bunch of little folklore bits from different places. So I figured we kind of bounce back and forth. I've got some of the notes from the ones that I did for that website post. And then we've got a whole bunch of them here in our kind of shared notes too. So do you want to do maybe the shared notes ones?
Sure.
All right. So do you want to start us off?
All right. So the first one then is fishing workers and sailors, which I feel like there are so many for.
Sure. This is very limited. This is not a complete collection in any way.
Right. But the first one is a taboo against having a black suitcase aboard.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Do you know what the... I swear I'm not going to do this for every single one, but I was just curious. What do you know? Why a black suitcase?
It has a little bit to do with the second one. If you look at the last half of that one.
That still doesn't answer my question.
Okay. Yeah. Cause it's the clergy, right? Right. So people who carry black suitcases tend to be professionals who are also professionals that deal in death. So doctors, clergy, lawyers.
Got it. Okay.
So you wouldn't want somebody carrying a black suitcase on board because it's inviting death on board.
I see. Okay. All right. So I have heard this one, a taboo against having women on the boat, or in some cases, in others, they could be lucky, such as a woman as a bowsprit. Is that what that says? Or
bowsprit. Mm-hmm.
Bowsprit. Yeah. What is that?
Or bowsprit. So do you know have you ever seen like a mermaid on the front of like a pirate ship?
Yes.
Bowsprit. That's it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You learned a new word.
I did. Clergy members were also bad luck, except during blessings. So that's like before it takes voyage, I guess?
Correct. So not while it's under sail, but before then. Clergy could come and bless the boat. And this is when you do the champagne and all that kind of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not saying the word alligator on a boat among coastal fishermen of Texas. I have never heard this, but then again, I'm not a coastal fisherman of Texas. So
that's true. So few of us are. But yeah, it really made me think of, because this is folklore that does go back at least to the 18th, but it was really interesting. I was thinking about that. And I was like, does that have something to do with Peter Pan as well? Like, is that where that comes from?
I have no
crocodile,
idea.
I don't know. Interesting.
I don't know. It's funny though. I know that my dad, he drove trucks for a while, and they would say like when your tire would kind of, or not yours, but I think it happens on 18-wheelers more, where it just kind of like strips off and there's like a big piece of tire in the road.
Yeah, gator tail.
Yeah, they would call that a gator, or so. That's, I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, I used to hear that even on like morning drive reports. Around here, they would say, got a big piece of gator tail in the second lane on.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Outside of, the trucking, like I said.
For sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But okay, what else? Throwing coins overboard for good luck or wind. Be careful how much, because it could be like a ton of wind and then you're in a hurricane, right?
Yes, exactly.
Coins also put in the boat at various points, such as under the mast for good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Blessing a boat or fleet before it goes out for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then dolphins as spirits of dead soldiers.
Nope.
And also albatross lore.
Dead sailors.
Not dead soldiers.
It's okay.
Dead sailors.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, also albatross lore.
Yeah, and of course that's with the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner when he shoots the albatross. This is why it's so bad, is because that's supposed to be potentially the soul of a sailor that has been killed again. So they don't let you do that. And the coins everywhere, or the coins under the mast and things like that. So there were different places in the boats where you might slip a coin in to make sure that it would stay lucky. And there were some people who believed that it actually would like draw or repel lightning during storms. But then there's also like this even kind of shows up if you've ever read Moby Dick. Ahab nails a coin. He nails a doubloon to the mast. And in his case, he's kind of promising it to whoever sights the whale first, right? Mm-hmm. But it is interesting. There's this folklore, like you attach coins to certain points of the boat to make it more seaworthy, basically. So
yeah, a lot of different reasons to do that. That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so you'd heard a few of those. You said you'd heard the taboo about women on board and the throwing coins overboard, right?
I think honestly, just the women one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and like dolphins and the albatross. Of course, I'm going to know the animal ones.
Oh, okay. Of course.
Because it's me. but yeah, mostly I think I've just heard about the women one. And that's probably just from like watching pirate type movies and shows, you know?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it is interesting because sometimes they would have, sometimes there would be an exception where like you could have one woman on board, but like there had to be like rules about that woman, like how old she was or like her marital status or, you know, what she wore on the boat was really important. Was she related to somebody on the boat or not? Like, so lots of little bits and pieces would kind of surface with that lore. But for a long time, there was definitely a kind of like very, this is a men's only occupation, blah, 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 blah kind of a thing.
Right.
So now,
right.
obviously that has shifted pretty substantially. So, okay. I'm going to dive into athletes. So professional athletes and some of the things related to their folk beliefs and things like that.
The yips.
What's that?
The yips.
The yips. That's a really good one. I don't think that was even in my post, but yeah. So Simone Biles got not the yips, but she got the, what did you call them? The twisties, right? Back in the previous, I think it was the previous Olympics or the previous national qualifications. It's basically the same thing as the yips. Like people get in their head and can't play the way they used to play until they can break that habit or break that thought pattern. So,
right.
So that's a big one. There's an essay that I really recommend for this called Baseball Magic by a guy named George Melch. It's Gmelch, where he is talking about the different sort of folk traditions of baseball. And one of the ones he talks basically about, there was an infielder who kept a cheese sandwich in his back pocket.
I think I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
I love baseball.
It's full of stuff. And like, this is the whole, like, you wear a certain piece of clothing, especially one that you've won in, and you keep that piece of clothing unwashed through the entire season so that it hold on to the luck. That's
in A League of Their Own. One of the girls doesn't wash her socks. And, you know, of course, Tom Hanks is like, good Lord, because it smells so bad.
Yeah. Well, it's not uncommon either. Like, it's actually really, really common for that to happen. There's a baseball player named Wade Boggs, which if anybody watches Good Mythical Morning, you will know that name because his baseball card is what they use as a standard for how dank something is when they open it. But Wade Boggs believed that since he got multiple hits in his rookie season, on days he ate chicken before a game, he would eat chicken before every game. So he would make sure that he had, eaten a platter full of chicken before he went out to play every time. Honus Wagner, a famous baseball player, believed that every bat only had 100 hits.
Oh.
But that's from a time when wooden bats were the standard. So aluminum bats be a little different. So let's see. There's the concept of the rally cap, which is if your team is losing, if everybody will turn their cap upside down, basically, and inside out, then it will reverse the bad luck. Similarly, hats for rodeo riders. They won't wear a new hat during a competition because it may have bad luck. So it definitely hasn't.
Yeah.
In baseball, there's a few things like don't shave before a game because it could remove your luck. Batters and boxers as well will spit in their hands as a way to boost strength. Some will wear snakeskin around their wrists because that's supposed to improve their abilities and their speed.
There's also, I remember this because I wrote about it. There's lore about snake skins being like good for not dropping things or like not breaking things. I think it is. So. Yeah.
I mean, that would make sense then because you don't want to drop the ball, right? For sure. That would work. And then not taking crossed game gear. So like if you find like golf clubs laying on the ground or bats laying on the ground and they've crossed each other, you shouldn't use those to play next, right? Like you need to leave those uncrossed for a while before you can use them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots there. Any others that you can think of?
I know there's this big one in baseball that I just had it. It is bugging the crap out of me that I can't think of it again. But it's fine.
It's not the wave or the seventh inning stretch or anything.
I don't think so. It'll probably come to me at the worst time. It's fine.
If it does, we can bounce back to it. All right. Do you want to do the next?
Yes, because the next one is treasure hunting lore, which I think is really neat. Okay, this isn't though. Bringing a sheep to sacrifice at certain spots, and that's just to like be able to find treasure.
So yes, sorry, sipping water. So yes, so oftentimes there would be the assumption there would be a guardian spirit of some kind, and it needed to kill something basically in order to be appeased. And so you would kill the sheep wherever the treasure was, and then you could dig in peace. And I mean, you know, we've already mentioned one animal death. I'm just going to go ahead and like briefly mention another. Neither of these are things I'm condoning, just saying this is a piece of the folklore, but sometimes it would be a dog, and which is also what they would do, you know, when they were digging mandrake roots, they would sometimes tie dogs to let the dogs pull the mandrake root up so that if the mandrake roots scream, supposedly killed anything, it would kill the dog. So, so yeah, so there's that. Yeah. So
very sad.
Very sad.
All right. So the next one, conditions that make a chest rise within the ground to make it easier to find.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
So there would be specific days or specific moon conditions.
Okay.
Specific days of the year when the treasure would push up in the ground and you could see little mounds of dirt over it. It would sort of make the ground rise above it. Mm-hmm.
Weird.
And so if you knew kind of roughly where the treasure was buried, you'd go and look for like a little hillock, you know, on a night when there was like a blue moon or something like that.
Right. And then the next one would be guardian spirits and ghosts.
Right. Which I mentioned already, but yeah.
Just so using spirits to guide you there or direct you?
Well, more defeating them. You had to. So there was, I mean, so for example, there's a lot of lore about like if you had pirates, and this is verging into a little bit of legend as opposed to stuff that we would necessarily say, oh, this is absolutely true. But the idea was that if a pirate was going to bury their treasure, they would, you know, you've heard the idea of dead man's chest, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, the idea was that the pirate captain would kill one of his crew and bury him with the treasure, and then his ghost would protect the treasure and guard it against anybody else stealing it. So it's the dead man's chest. So, yep. So that's that.
I know that. Okay. All right. Well, what's your next one?
The next one for me would be merchants and retail work.
Okay.
This is one that both of us have had some experience with, right? And one of these is pretty obvious, right? So how many places have you been to where you walk in and you look above the cash register on the wall, and what do they have framed or pinned up there?
Painted?
Painted, really? Painted?
I don't know. What are you talking about?
Like a first dollar?
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure. Actually, I don't see that very often anymore.
Oh, really? Okay.
Then again, like, to me, that seems like more of a small business type of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
You don't see those as quite as much anymore, you know?
Yeah. Well, I should, this okay. Fair for the painted thing. I'm really talking about like shops, like shop owners and small retail, not,
because
this is not Walmart.
No. And I wasn't quite thinking Walmart, but more like where I was for a while, like Bath and Body Works, for example.
Gotcha. Yeah, and another thing that would be kind of corporate, this would be small businesses where they, you know, put their first dollar earned up on the wall. So, and that also you should never spend it, because if you spend it, your business will close. So yeah, that's always a sort of rule about that. And then using waxing moon. So if you do anything, like if you run promotions during a waxing moon or you have sales during a waxing moon, it will make your business more prosperous. So you should always try to make your first sale of the day to your first customer, even if it means that sale doesn't advantage you, right? So, for example, there's some merchants who, you know, even if you sold it at a loss, as long as you sold it, then that was good sales for the rest of the day. So if somebody walked in and, you know, was looking at something and you're like, oh, gosh, that thing normally runs for like $20. I'll give it to you for 2, right? And like, that's just for the first person who buys that day. They get this thing that normally would be really expensive, but because they were the first person in the door, they can get this great deal. And then the rest of the day, the business is better. So have you ever heard that before?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Business deals shouldn't be done on a Friday because they will come to a bad end. That's kind of goes into, we've talked about that before. You shouldn't start new things on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad luck. And then working on a Sunday is, in theory, bad luck. But we've both worked retail and we know that no one cares what day it is.
That's true. But I will say that Sundays are worse for me, at least, especially in the restaurant business. Sundays were the absolute worst in terms of tips, in terms of rudeness, in terms of like party size. It was just awful. I loathed Sundays and tried my best to not work them. But it was also the case for retail. Like they were lesser hours, but it seemed like the day just would drag, and it was always people kind of in a pissy mood. I don't know. Sundays just always feel kind of like weird to me, like liminal in a way, like in the middle of the road. I don't know. Sundays were awful retail. So that might be a little bit of superstition or not, but we would also say like full moons would be kind of hard sometimes, or like busier than expected. If that, like if it landed on a Tuesday, it'd be like, why is this Tuesday so busy? Oh, it's a full moon. Like it was just little stuff like that.
Yeah, there's full belief with that. I don't remember if I put it in our notes or not, but like people who work in like the medical profession. You did. And that's it. Definitely what I've heard before. That one shows up for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some fun stuff about, well, I should say that you shouldn't, like when you're cleaning up your business, if you sweep the dirt out the back door or sweep after dark, that's considered bad luck for your business. So don't do that.
Sometimes you got to sweep up after dark.
I know. I'm like, well, if you work in retail, you don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. I did think there's a couple of things about like that shopkeepers might take into consideration. Like they're used to sort of profile customers to decide if they're shady dealers or not. And some of that stuff, like, don't get me wrong, profiling people is generally a bad idea. But these two were kind of funny, so I'm going to share them. So,
okay.
One is, if a man's beard is of a different color than his hair, then the shopkeep should expect shady dealing.
Oh no, my husband.
Shady fella.
No. I'm going to tell him he has to dye his hair or his beard, one or the other.
Exactly.
Just for men, baby.
Yeah. And then the other one was, if somebody rattles money in their pocket while they're shopping or haggling, they're not to be trusted.
Oh, that's kind of an interesting one.
I thought it was too. I thought it was really, really neat. And then I'm sure you've heard the Rose of Jericho. You keep that behind your cash register, sprinkle the water around. We've talked about that before. And then putting either a golden coin or silver coin somewhere where the sun or moon, depending, obviously gold for sun, silver for moon, can shine on it, draws more money into your business. So,
okay.
Yep. That's what I got there.
I like it. All right. Next one is construction.
Mm-hmm.
And this is things that get walled up during building.
Mm-hmm.
So you have in parentheses, even some historical lore about people being left in the foundations of bridges or walls as sacrifices, whether intentional or not. And that just makes me think of that, well, Poe first, but then also that angel episode.
Oh, yeah. The guy gets walled up in his apartment, Dennis.
Yes. Yeah, Dennis.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this was not an uncommon thing where, and I should say, like, it's one of those things where, like, we don't necessarily know how true anything is, because sometimes this is stuff that would get spread as kind of negative propaganda about a community. And sometimes it's stuff where it's sort of like, well, did somebody get sacrificed or did they just die during the process of making this? So for example, things like I think it was the Brooklyn Bridge, right? When they put that in, that was a really massive and very involved construction process. And there were a lot of people, I think there was maybe 100 or so deaths in the construction process of this. And there would be people who would be in the kind of casements, which were like the footers that were being sunk at the bottom of the river that the bridge was going to be standing on. And they would get basically caught in those, and they couldn't really get them out once they were in there. And so, they're kind of left there. And there was a long, folk belief tradition, at least, even if not an actual practice, that anytime that you built a bridge, there had to be something sacrificed for that bridge to stay up. And if it wasn't sacrificed, then that bridge would eventually fall in some kind of catastrophe. So, and a lot of times what it would be, people would say like, well, whatever the first thing to cross the bridge is, right? And so they would do, if you've read fairy tales, the whole like, whatever the first thing is that you touch when you get home, and everybody's like, oh, it's gonna be my dog. Okay, I can get rid of my dog as long as I get, fabulous wealth. And of course, it's always their kid, right?
Huh.
So like the idea was always like, oh, we'll just let a dog go across the bridge and that'll be the thing that gets killed. A lot of dogs dying tonight. I'm sorry about that.
What the hell?
And sometimes it would be a chicken. They would like let a chicken go across the bridge, right? And then they would have chicken dinner. I don't know. Winter chicken bridge. I don't know.
Somebody.
But I mean, then like there's also like stories about like where a person would be the first thing across the bridge, and then that person would have to get killed in order for the bridge to stay up. So there's lots of stories about like whatever gets walled in or dies during the process becomes a part of that building. So it's always worth remembering, like, especially when you're thinking about like these big massive construction projects that especially up until fairly recently in the modern age, you probably don't have very many buildings that don't have at least one death associated with them. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're a necromancer, skyrises might be your place to go. I don't know. Do you want to like just to bounce towards something a little more related to this? Do you want to bounce to the loggers and talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Okay. Loggers. Let's see. The first one is telling lies or stories that break in new loggers. So like having them go look for imaginary tools like a sky hook or a cable stretcher. Mm-hmm. So that might be like snipe hunting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Down here. Okay. Let's see. The use of grisly or grim gallows humor tales to deflect potential harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then cold hands or feet the night before someone dies or is injured.
Yeah. Have you ever heard any of that stuff before? I mean, you mentioned the snipe hunt, so you're familiar with that concept, right?
I am, yeah, with the concept. I haven't really heard that from loggers, but it makes sense. It is such a dangerous job, one would think, that I almost feel like you would have to like kind of break in the new kids. Like, we got to make sure you're serious. We got to make sure you listen to like, everything we tell you. I don't know, like maybe I'm being silly, but yeah, it makes sense, I guess.
Well, yeah, and you also want to, it's sort of an initiation ritual, right? Like you get them through this thing, you let them look stupid, and you say, hey, okay, now that you've felt embarrassed, that's out of the way. You should never be embarrassed because that could cost you your life. So always, be respectful of the stuff around you and be respectful of the people who know more than you do. So see that. And then the gallows humor is always one of those things where it's like, you tell the dark joke, but the dark joke is there because it allows you to face the possibility of death in a job where, logging, for those who don't know, is almost always is almost always in the top 10 most dangerous professions in the United States whenever they come up with that list. So, yeah,
I believe it.
Yeah. So it's definitely one of those things where like it's a very dangerous job. And so people tell stories all the time to, remind themselves that, mortality is a condition of the job, but then also try to kind of stave off against it, right? Like maybe if you laugh at death, it's less likely to come after you. Mm-hmm. Unless you're following a truck full of logs and you've avoided a plane crash and then death stalks you and your friends and you get a 4-movie franchise out of that? Was that how many Final Destinations there were? I can't remember how many.
Oh, there's like 7, I think now.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. That movie, though, like really affected me. Like, I still can't get behind trucks on the interstate that are carrying like things like that. I can't do it.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like Jaws, like,
yes.
The reality is that it doesn't really happen, but the psychological reality is that it could happen at any time.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to bounce to sex work.
Okay.
And just as a note, I take the position that sex work is work. So
agreed.
Throwing it in there. So, and of course, it's really important to remember that like it is a vulnerable work. It is also a very dangerous line of work for some people. And it's a work where people are exploited frequently, but that does not necessarily mean that it is not important work or work that should be respected. And some stuff is stuff that I'm sure people are aware of, So for example, if you had a red light outside of your house, right? If you were in a city and you had red lights hanging outside of your business, you would be part of the red light district, right? Which is usually the vice district. And that could be a very strong indication that there was sex work going on there. So, which, I mean, from a color association, like what do we associate with red with?
Passion.
Yeah. Right. So worked pretty well.
Yeah.
I really thought you were going to say painted again. Please, God, no. Please.
Wouldn't that have been funny? No, it was taking everything in me not to scream Roxanne. So I'm sorry.
That would have been great too. I would have gone with it.
Okay.
So sex workers would tear the corners of cash money because it would stave off both bad luck, bad Johns or bad clients, and then pregnancy as well. Now I should note that's not an effective way to stop pregnancy or STIs or anything like that, but that was a folk belief. So there's a type of evergreen leaf called a boldo leaf that you could sprinkle around a space where sex work is being performed, and that would sort of protect the sex workers within that space. So it would be sort of sprinkled around brothels and things like that. Carrying buckeyes was thought to stave off STIs. Carrying a Jezebel root, which, as I understand it, is a variety of iris root that you could dress that with sexual fluids. And then if you carried that with you, you basically could sort of pick and choose the kind of client you wanted and keep them satisfied and sort of complacent. So they would, they were coming to you and giving you money, but like they wouldn't ask you for the weird thing,
Yeah. So this may be too much, but my question is like your own or others that you're servicing? Sorry if that's an inappropriate term. I'm honestly trying to be respectful.
No. I understand. So like, in other words, would you put a client's sexual fluids on it or your own?
Right.
My understanding is it's your own, but I think that there's probably some variety and there are people probably who would use the sexual fluids of a client they particularly liked to keep them coming back for more. So
yeah, I could see that. Or like one that was, good, quote unquote, in their eyes, like one that a positive interaction maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're like, oh, that person paid well, was respectful, did exactly what they were supposed to do, and got out of here when they were
I want more people like them.
Yeah. That understand the nature of this as a business,
right.
Or that are kind in the way that they approach this,
Right.
And then the last one I have is that you could burn a shoe sprinkled with cinnamon and sugar, and that would help draw customers. So,
oh, I've never heard that.
I had not until I did the research, but there it is.
Really cool.
Do you want to do the law and medicine?
Yes. Okay. We have one for lawyers and judges, and it's just a little proverb, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a saying that I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah. If the law is not on your side, pound on the facts. If neither the facts nor the law are on your side, pound on the table.
Yep.
Okay. So for medicine, kind of some sayings as well. See one, do one, teach one for surgeries. But then there's also the kind of more morbid one. See one, do one, kill one.
Yes.
That's awful. But I mean, gallows humor is not just for, dangerous loggers. Like it's prevalent in a lot of, not just occupations, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in medicine, particularly if you're a surgeon,
for sure,
you will lose a patient. It's almost guaranteed that it will happen. Unless you're like a dermatological surgeon who's working on very, very minor, superficial surgeries. And even then there's a possibility. So like if you're a surgeon, it's one of those things where like the expectation is at some point you're going to have to deal with the fact that you've killed somebody, and that's just part of the job. And that is hard. So, yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't imagine. Let's see. Next one. Full moons as the worst ER nights, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And then the first night on call always has a weird case, and weird case lore abounds. So like what qualifies as a weird case?
Right. So this is something where, somebody comes in with something that should be pretty basic, right? Like they're coming in, they're having cardiac arrhythmia, or, they're having something that, you should be able to treat pretty easily. But if it's your first night on rounds, it's going to turn out to be something where like it's not only that their, heart is going into arrhythmia, but like they've somehow managed to start producing kidney stones in their intestines or something like that. Like it'll be something very weird is happening in their body.
The zebra as opposed to the horses.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. So yeah, that's the night that you expect zebras. So that sounds like it should be the name of like a really esoteric Wes Anderson medical horror film, Night of the Zebras.
Right. I'd watch that.
Yeah, we do. And then the full moons, I should say, they actually, so that is lore that is so prevalent that there was a medical study done back in, I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, that looked to see if there was actually an uptick in.
And did they disprove it?
And they did. So at least in the sample that they took, the survey sample they took, which was fairly large, there's several hundred hospitals, I think.
Okay.
They found that there was no significant uptick when the moon was full in at least the caseload that was coming in the door, or in any, sort of like amount of time that was being spent on caseload. Like it was erratic, right? Like there wasn't an easy way to predict it other than things like they do have like certain national holidays that you're more likely to have people at the ER. So 4th of July, people wind up at the ER, but like for just the full moon, it was not a contributing factor that they could tell. But if you talk to people in the medical profession, they will tell you, like, I don't care what that study says.
Every single one I've talked to.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you feel different, honestly, I'd be happy to hear it. But and you work in the field, but yeah, I've remember reading or hearing that was proved false, and then every other person being like, well, maybe it's anecdotal, but not in my experience. And yeah. That's just
Yep. So, yeah, I thought that was it's one of those things where it's really interesting, but it was so prevalent that people were like, okay, well, let's do a scientific study, and scientific study says no, it's not true, and still people are like, I don't care what the scientific study says, my lived experience says this.
I mean, that's kind of how magic is in general,
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, yeah, scientists could and should tell me, like, a tiger's eye does not actually increase your feelings of bravery unless it's like psychosomatic or something. But like at the same time, that stuff combined with the other things I did helped my husband get a job. And some could argue that was all psychosomatic, or that would have happened anyway, and what I did had no effect, blah, 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 blah. But my point is, like, I believe it, and I feel like it worked. And science, I believe in science, but it's like a separate thing. I don't know. They kind of like complement each other, but I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy for me, I guess.
Yeah, I've actually been watching this show called Evil, which is it's a really interesting show.
Yeah, I recommended it like a while ago, and it's such a weird name, or not weird, but just like a kind of nondescript name that you probably don't even remember me mentioning it, but that's the one with like the paralysis, the sleep paralysis demon that's super creepy. Yeah, George. Yes.
Yeah, but there's a line from, so there's one of the main characters, the guy played Luke Cage. He is a priest in training, but he, he's talking to one of the skeptics on his team, because this is the whole thing, is they're trying to determine whether or not people who claim demonic possession or miracles, whether they're telling the truth or not. So he goes in from a faith-based perspective, and then he has a team of skeptics, and they try to determine what the likeliness of this is. And he has this really interesting line where he's talking to one of the skeptics who's talking about sort of empirical evidence. And he's like, look, empirical evidence is wonderful and it absolutely has a place, but there are places where science can't understand things that don't repeat. Science can't understand things that only happen once. And that's where wonder steps in. And so I think that's kind of, how we view it, is this like, I 100% believe in science. I think you should get vaccinated when the vaccines are available. Like, I think there's, a lot of science, but I also understand that there are specific anecdotal situations where science is going to fail to explain specific things that have happened to specific people in those particular moments. So,
and let's also not forget that what is seen as magic or the unexplained is often just science we don't understand yet,
Correct, yeah.
or not science, but able to be explained in a scientific manner that we just are not able to do yet.
Right. Yeah. It's a natural phenomenon that we just don't have any vernacular. We don't have any language for quite comprehending, including the language of science yet.
Exactly.
So. Yep. Okay. I'm going to do my last one, and then maybe you can wrap us up with those last two on there. So.
Okay.
And then, so the last one I've got is acting, which I figure you'll probably know a few of these. So for example, when somebody's about to go on stage, you don't wish them good luck. You say what?
Break a leg. Although among my friend group, one time, one of my bestest friends in the whole wide world, I think she still listens to this podcast every now and then. She fell off the stage because she was under a sheet because it was part of this comedy that we were putting on, and she fell and she broke her toe. And so from then on, we would always say, break a toe.
Oh. And yeah, and that's a form of that gallows humor, right? Like,
it is.
And it's not that acting is vulnerable in the same way that like logging is.
Right.
But there is a vulnerability to, standing on a stage and hoping that people like you.
That is very true, especially when there used to be the danger of, like vegetables being thrown at you. Sure.
Or, even with, in this gets into some of the stuff going on in a theater situation. Theater is an illusion, right? There's not actually a town on stage, and you're, walking through a door and it's just scaffolding and stuff back there. So it's very easy. It's not always well lit. There are riggings in the overhead that can fall and hurt you. Like there's all kinds of stuff that can go wrong. So you have to be careful, including being careful about things that you say. So break a leg is one of them.
Yes.
There's a specific play that you're not supposed to mention.
You mean the Scottish play?
The Scottish play.
Which is Macbeth. You're not supposed to say Macbeth in a theater, which is kind of funny because there's this, we are like, in my house, we are religious watchers of Jeopardy. And whenever Macbeth comes up, there's always like a little bit of a hesitancy to say it because they are technically on a stage in a theater. And it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes they'll say it. Sometimes like they'll be allowed or be able to say the Scottish play, or like that's the actual answer, instead of saying Macbeth, actors will say, this, whatever. But I don't know. I just always kind of laugh when that comes up because it's like the right answer, but it's also kind of bad luck to say it at the same time. Yeah, for sure. It's really funny to see that sort of like moment of like, do I actually want to say this here? So, right. And funnily enough, there's also lore that unless you are performing Shakespeare, you shouldn't even quote Shakespeare while you're in a theater. Like that can also bring bad luck. So I don't think I've heard that one, but yeah. You're not supposed to eat peanuts backstage. That's bad luck. Okay. Lots of clothing-based taboos. So if you put ostrich feathers on a costume, it invites bad luck. Leaving shoes or hat on a bed or a dressing table is bad luck. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else. Good luck side of things. So people will spit on their makeup brushes before using them as a way to ensure that they have good audiences. We never did that. We didn't either. I think that might be a relic of an earlier age. Yeah. Or like when they use grease paint or something. Right. Which, yeah, grease paint, and then you paint it on with spit. And like people are wonder why actors had bad reputations. So this was interesting because this evolved, and I think you can probably see what it evolved into. So there was a ritual, particularly in bygone era, of you would light a candle in your dressing room just before going on stage, and then you would leave it burning for the opening night of the performance. And so if you had a stage manager or a tech that could kind of come back there and watch it, it would be fine. But sure. Like I need that extra bit going on opening night. Okay. I don't need that. I swear, you actors. So I'm guessing you haven't ever encountered that in the real world, right? No, I have not. But do you have any sense of like what that could have evolved into? I'm having some sort of idea of like maybe leaving on a dressing room light or like a, I don't know. I don't know. You're right in the ballpark. There's a specific kind of light that's always left on in a theater. It's called. Oh, I don't remember. The ghost light. Oh. Yeah. It's usually just a single small bulb, but so that the theater will never truly go dark. Right. Yeah. And because if you go dark,
that means that your play is canceled or closed, right? And so they leave the ghost light on as a way to make sure that the theater never goes dark. And in some ways, it's a safety thing. So if you go into a dark theater, you can at least see something. But that kind of, it's one of those things where like the candle burning backstage evolved in this idea that you need to have a perpetual light to illuminate the experience of the theater for people. So,
yeah, that one is not one I've really encountered very often.
Yeah.
It's weird because like we had a lot of the superstitions, like we, when I did theater. So that's weird. I never came across that one.
Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously there's your black should match, but that's less of a
I never did either.
And more of a, like, your director will be mad at you if you're backstage and your blacks don't match. So and that just means that so stagehands usually wear all black clothing. And so you're supposed to wear all the same shade of black, but it's really hard to find stuff that's all in the same shade of black.
It really is. Yeah.
So.
All right. Okay.
So last two.
Yes. So mining. So don't whistle in mines, which, yes, I've heard that. And always worry if you hear whistling, as it is a sign of disaster. Why is that? Just air moving through like quickly because something is collapsing, maybe?
Could be that. Could be related to the second thing on the list, too.
Tommy knockers, knocking at my door. Type of troll that would make pinging or knocking noises before a cave-in.
So it could be a warning, yeah.
Yeah, this came from Chinese miners, didn't it? Like
I've heard Cornish, but maybe it is Chinese miners. I don't know.
Because I know that a lot of Chinese workers were exploited for like building train tracks and mining and things like that. So it would make sense that some of their lore would kind of trickle in, And then the last one is don't kill a rat in a mine or you kill a miner.
Yep. Very similar to, dolphins and albatrosses. So. Yep.
And then there's always the canary in the cave, and if they die, then you need to get out because you're about to die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the whole canary in the coal mine thing, right?
Coal mine, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, and then firefighters. Everything happens in threes, which I've definitely heard. And then it's good luck or it provides protection to wear a necklace of Saint Florian, the protector saint of firefighters. And that's evolved in recent years to also include rubber bracelets connected to charitable causes. Right,
because obviously there's a lot of people who are not Catholic, and so they don't necessarily have the St. Florian medal. So there are a lot of firefighters will do that even if they're not Catholic. But now, so rubber bracelets, particularly if they're rubber bracelets associated with charities and things like that, they will sort of work that way. So, yeah. So this is a big pile of lore. Again, there's a post on our website that has some of this. There's lots and lots of resources for this. This all falls under something called occupational folklore, which is one of the big areas of folklore study. But I think it's really interesting to sort of think about, like, we only hit a few occupations here. There are probably, hundreds of different jobs each with their own lore. I'm sure, even, you said you used to work at Bath and Body Works, right? I'm sure there were, maybe not the ones that you can immediately remember, but there were at least beliefs or vague superstitions associated with that. I mean, you talked about the full moon one, for example. So
yeah,
that would be one thing. There probably were, things about like, oh, if this certain kind of customer comes in, they're going to be a problem and they're not going to buy anything,
Right. Yeah. Well, we definitely had like regulars who we kind of knew to not treat a certain way as in like bad, but just like they would cause problems if it wasn't like fall down. Oh my gosh, we're so happy you're in the store spending your money. Like it was just like, okay, you really have to kiss their ass or they're going to be a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just an observational sort of thing that builds up, which a lot of this lore is. It's just people kind of observing things and sort of, running with it. So, okay. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and finish up by discussing magic as a job. Business. Magic. Okay, so magic as a job, magic as a profession. Now, neither of us are professional magicians. We should say that, right?
Right.
I mean,
I am not a magician.
nothing up my sleeve. No, I'm kidding. But I have done, I mean, in a certain way, we are professional magicians, right?
Well, I hate the word magician. It makes me think of like David Copperfield and David Blaine. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I hate that type of magic. Like it literally creeps me out. It gives me a weird feeling. I don't know why. I've always hated it ever since I was growing up, and like my little brother loved it. So I would just be like, okay, well, I'm not going to watch this, David Copperfield special where he makes the Empire State Building disappear or whatever. So anyway, always hated it. But yeah, so can we say like, I don't know, something else?
Magic workers?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Why not just witch as a job?
Okay, well, mostly because witch is one thing and magic worker would be broader. Because there are people who would not take the nomenclature of witch. So, for example, you wouldn't necessarily find a root doctor or a hoodoo worker who would want to call themselves a witch. But for our purposes,
okay,
we can use witch. It's fine.
No, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But so when maybe not magician still though, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can.
Sorry, I'm being picky and annoying.
We'll say witch for this, but with the understanding that what we mean is people who work in magic, right?
I like magic workers too. That's fine.
Okay.
I just don't want to be like, the art of misdirection.
Close up magic.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a few different ways this can kind of come through. Kind of the one that people think of the most is like somebody who reads tarot for money, right? Or reads cards or reads whatever for money, fortune telling for money, which I have done. I've done that as a sort of like donations, like it's kind of pay what you feel kind of an approach. And so when something I'm never comfortable sort of saying like, here is my rate, which is just me. I don't judge anybody who does say, here's my rate. But I'm always kind of like, well, I will read for you. And if you feel so inclined, here is kind of what most people would pay and kind of run with it that way, which is just kind of how I feel like I function best in that. But that's just my personal opinion on that. Have you ever given reading for goods or money?
No. I mean, I've definitely been like asked when I haven't really necessarily been in the mood, and so I feel like it was kind of like doing it as a favor almost, but never in exchange for anything like that. More just to, in exchange of friendship, like if that makes sense.
Yeah, reciprocal, but not necessarily transactional.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah. Actually, just yesterday, I did the first tarot reading for my daughter, and she kept asking about it. And after she found out I had a few decks, and she's like, when are you going to do my reading? So we did one, and it was really sweet and just made me laugh.
That's fun.
That she's getting into that.
It wasn't like an oops, all towers, was it?
No, but the devil did show up, but he was first, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure she saw that and she's like, Mom.
Yeah, I had to explain.
Out of the deck next time. Oh, goodness. Yeah. And I mean, in terms of, do you have any thoughts on would you read cards for money? Like, I know that you'd probably be like, well, I want to make sure I'm really good at it first, but.
Of course, you know me so well. Yeah. I would be like, I'm not confident enough to, but if I were, then yeah, I think I would. I think I would probably have trouble like also pricing myself like you were saying. It would probably be more like a donation type of thing. Plus you kind of run into like weird gambling or like fortune telling laws. Sometimes it can sometimes be illegal, so you got to be careful with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, be careful with what you're calling it, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah,
but I would consider it.
Yeah, you can't say that you're giving professional advice or that it has to be basically couched as entertainment only. So yeah, but it's a very common way to make money doing. There's also people who do like psychic readings and like phone psychics and things like that. We actually know somebody who has done that before. That's part of how they make their income, and they are a professional like card reader as well. But I've also known people who do it, and it's a little more, I don't want to say fraudulent, but like it's not actually about doing psychic readings. It's just kind of about following a script in that scenario. So,
Oh, okay.
I mean, but I think that's true. There's a lot of professions, like there's sales, when you're doing sales, telesales, right? You're following a script. So, if we feel, and I don't love that, but if we're not going to be like, that should be illegal too.
Right.
Not the phone psychic thing. So the real issue is when it becomes predatory. So
yeah, absolutely.
but a lot of things, I mean, loan companies can become predatory, payday loans and stuff. So yeah, so there's that whole way of doing it. What about, I mean, don't we all dream someday of opening up our little magic shop?
I don't know.
Ooh, so you're like, that is not your jam?
No, I think it kind of used to be, but I don't know. Just, I don't dream of working anymore. I know that sounds like really sassy, but I don't mean it to. I just like, I don't even want to think about doing that anymore.
That's fair. I mean, if that's not your jam, it's not your jam. So
yeah.
But it's definitely like, it's something where I think a lot of people, especially once they're kind of in sort of witchy space for a while, they sort of think like, oh, I really would like to have this kind of a witchy shop or this kind of a.
Don't get me wrong. I really miss, there was one in my hometown that is now gone. And I just miss the smell, the vibes in general. Like you would walk in, there would always be like a world music type CD playing. It was just my maturity into witchcraft, and I loved that store, and I'm just very sad it's gone. So it would definitely, if I were to have one, I would try to kind of replicate the vibes of that place.
What was it? I mean, you said the smell. I think the smell is such a big thing for sure.
Yeah.
Was there, when you visualize it in your head, like walking into it, what was it that you saw or felt, or what was it like?
There were a ton of books. So, and it was mostly like the New Age section of Barnes and Noble, but just expanded out, So it was a ton of, and this was in, I would say, around the year 2000, when a lot of that stuff wasn't readily available. I was just ecstatic to be able to walk into a place like that in my tiny little small town and be able to look through, books on not just Wicca, but other things as well. But I mean, there was less because it was the year 2000, but at the same time, it was way more than I'd ever even known about,
That's fair.
So yeah, a lot of journals, and then there was like a jewelry case that had a lot of fun jewelry that I picked up over the years. Candles, CDs, lots of things. Incense, big thing of incense, and it was mostly sandalwood that I remember smelling. I think
that's a good smell for sure.
Yeah, one of my faves.
Yeah. The one I mentioned earlier, Aroma G's, that's kind of our biggest local one at this point. I just took my youngest daughter to visit that one a week or two ago for the first time. She'd never been to any kind of a witchy shop. And it definitely is that kind of like you walk in and there's that smell, right? There's that sort of witchy shop smell that you get to. And I actually really like that one because it's kind of laid out in a really fun way, where the first room is a lot of like the charms, like the little bracelet charms and things like that. But there's also a lot of like conditioned oils and things like that. But then you go to the next room and it's all the stones laid out. And then they have a candle dressing station where you can like dress your own.
I love that.
It's so great. But they have a section that's just for journals, like a room that's like just journals and statues, a room that's like soaps and bath products. And they have this enormous book room that also has a candle wall on one side too. And I think that's definitely like the vibe I would go for. Is that, like that, or if anybody's ever been to, or anybody ever went to like the Harry's Occult in Philadelphia, where it was basically just like a antiquarian bookshop that specialized in occult stuff. Like that's my vibe 100%. So.
I wish. And but like, I don't want to run it, Yeah,
you just want to be able to go. It is funny because like when I was in college, we had this great local shop, which still exists, but it's not anything like it was back when I was in college, where like people would gather, and like the woman who ran it, she was really more of like a rock hound who just kind of also had some new age stuff. but she would teach you how to like wire wrap jewelry. And then like people would just hang out, and there were like past life regression therapy sessions with a guy who was actually a professional hypnotist. And like, it was really cool. Like I miss this sort of community space that shop can be. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Well, in terms of like magic as a job, like, are there limits or ethics that you feel have to apply, or is it just kind of the same limits and ethics that apply to all magic?
I mean, what would be the difference for you?
Well, I mean, a lot of people are very sketchy about, like, they don't like the idea of charging money for magic at all.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question kind of becomes like, well, is there a limit to how you charge? So for some people, like, I've seen people who will charge, $300 or $400 for a reading, and like their readings are in depth, or they'll, charge $300 or $400 for, doing a reading in a candle service for somebody or something like that. And for some people that feels like it's perfectly reasonable, perfectly normal. For other people that might feel really exploitative. So I didn't know if like, or you think about the goods that you find in a witchy shop, right?
Yeah.
If they're making them on site and they're charging kind of a premium for that, we're pretty cool with it. If they're just buying a bunch of stuff off of like Amazon and then reselling it with a markup, like, does that raise any ethical hackles for you? Or like, how do you feel about stuff like that?
I feel like that would be its own podcast, honestly, Cory. Like, that's such a big topic. Because
we got 30 seconds, so let's figure it out.
Because there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, and especially Amazon. But I'm still like, I still order from Amazon, so I'm a hypocrite. Yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where, yeah, we try to make ethical choices and ethical decisions, and we do the best we can. But sometimes we have to operate in the system that we're in. So, but yeah, it's just one of those things where I kind of, people, and like some people would hesitate as a magic shop owner to sell things that people would use for like hexes, right?
Right.
And that doesn't mean that they're against hexes personally, but that they don't want to help other people do hexes if they don't know what they're doing. So, I
mean, but I feel like you could almost take anything and use it, if you're, I guess, educated enough in the ways of witchcraft and form a hex or a hexing sort of thing. I mean, you could just take a name paper and, spit on it and, and flush it down the toilet or throw it in the litter box or something, right? Like,
yeah, I think more like they wouldn't sell like a hex kit, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Or they wouldn't sell things that are specific, like they wouldn't sell aconite or wolfsbane because it's poisonous, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I can respect that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just interesting. But then you also have people who are like, well, I just won't sell left-hand path books, or I won't sell books that have satanic witchcraft involved. And then for that, does that become like, for you, are you like, oh, well, no, that's like, I actually would sell that stuff. Like, where would you kind of drop the needle on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably have to be like an individual basis type of thing. I don't know. I'd have to see, because I would say probably, but then I'm like, I don't know. This is all hypothetical. It doesn't.
No,
I'm not beholden to anything.
No.
Yeah, I probably would.
Yeah,
just because like I'm pretty, anti-censorship, but just because like when things start getting censored, it is always the like LGBTQ that start getting censored first, and then like alternate religions and things like that.
Minority communities for
exactly.
Which they flip that around. There are obviously witchcraft books written by like white supremacists, and like, when do you carry those? How do you deal with that? So
no,
right. It's hard because you're like, well, I am anti-censorship, but also those people don't need a platform.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's just one of those things. When people think about like magic as a job, I think it can be very easy to romanticize you're sort of like, you own the Sally Owen shop and practical magic, where it's, you don't put it on your head. Put the ointment on your head.
Well, if it doesn't go on my head, then where would I put it?
Try to remember.
That's it. Try to remember.
My mistake. Right, but people like kind of envision that. And I mean, there is an element of that. There's a romance to it, but I think like it's also important to remember that like when people are talking about doing magic as a job, one, magic has been a job for people for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like even
Whether
if
they
it's
called
just,
it magic or not.
yeah, like cunning folk, they were doing this work.
Or even like
Sometimes, yeah,
the midwife of the village.
hmm yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were people who were doing this kind of work and being compensated, maybe not necessarily just like directly with money, but trading goods and services and things like that.
Here's a jar of honey from my beehive.
Exactly. Right.
Here's some eggs. And, I noticed you don't keep chickens, things like that.
Exactly. And so this has been valued work for a long time, but it's work that's easy to romanticize, but legitimately involves a lot of complicated thinking and work. So I wanted to enter that conversation, just kind of think about that a little bit out loud with you. So.
Yeah. Well, I also want to put forth that we are, I guess, technically paid magical people because this podcast, we are paid for it through Patreon, through our patrons who, choose every month to say, yes, like you guys are worth it for us to put money into, and for, the perks, I guess, that we offer with it, which is pretty fantastic in my opinion. Cory does a great job with that.
When we get them out on time, they're lovely.
Well,
that's the tricky part.
That's the thing, like with moving and lots of crazy life stuff happening, it happens. But anyway, I've lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. Which is that we are paid magical people, and
yes,
and we wrote a book which we get paid for in theory. So
exactly, yeah. So we do. I feel like like to not acknowledge that is disingenuous, and I don't feel that we are trying to be disingenuous. So I want to acknowledge that we are technically and it's not necessarily for our expertise, but it is for our, I guess, the work that we put into this podcast.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's less about like a spell that we are particularly casting for somebody, but it's more about finding ways to address topics that people want to hear about, want to think about. We do research. Research goes into the show, and we have conversations where we explore these things and hopefully get conversations going about this as well. So,
yeah.
And that's not to puff ourselves up. I mean, anybody with a microphone could do this, including a crappy microphone built into your computer, as we proved 15 years ago.
Yes, we did.
So, but yeah, just having that ability to have these kind of conversations, I think, and again, we are bringing to bear, you use the word expertise. I mean, I do feel like there is a little bit of that because.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, we do bring research and stuff into it, but it's also, how do we bring people together about these topics that are important to us and then clearly important to them too? So. Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, yeah, I mean, big conversation topic, big thing to get into. Before we go, we do have a listener email. Would you mind being our reader for this?
Sure.
If you run into words that is hard, please tell me.
Okay. I'm scared now. Okay. Greetings, Cory and Lane. Love what y'all are doing. It's helping me out a lot. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. You helped me find Lee, who is Lee Rouscandy. Mm-hmm. Whose story and footsteps cross mine. How is this pronounced?
I would say Lenore Ryan, but.
Okay. That's what I would have said too, but you never know with me. Lenore Ryan grad and have a MDiv?
MDiv, yeah. Master of I was going to say divination, but that's not right.
Nope. Divinity. There we go. Yes. Divinity. I know things. Yeah. From Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary. Maybe you should have read this. Lee taught at LR and helped the seminarian write his thesis. I tracked it down after reading A Strange Experience, which I only found because of your work in New World Witchery. I share it with you and thanks. There's not much new information for a folklorist, but I thought you'd find it interesting. I started reading tarot the same semester I started seminary. Now, almost 10 years later, is it Cyprianic?
I would say that's Cyprianic or Cyprianic.
Cyprianic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorcerer, serving a rural Southern congregation part-time and doing hospital chaplaincy the rest. St. Cyprian would be a great deep dive for y'all to do sometime. I've followed his legend all around the world, and it's been such a blast. His story and that of other folks like Lee. Is it Broukers?
Yeah, that's good. Broukers, yeah.
up north has really inspired me and comforted me when I felt like I was alone in the church and gave me a way into magic from a place I was familiar with. I'm sure you know, but he's got legends in Denmark, Norway, mentioned in Elizabethan grimoires of England, celebrated in Portugal, Spain, and worked with up and down both Americas. Worth a look. That is all from listener S. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for reading that link.
Sorry.
No, you did great. I mean, you did absolutely fantastic on that. And yeah, they were talking about St. Cyprian's the one that has all the legends and all the different places. Lee Rouse Gandy he wrote a book called Strange Experience about his experience as a Bracher using Pennsylvania German folk magic. So that's kind of the connection. He sent me a neat little article. Actually, is a dissertation, basically, or thesis written by somebody who did a bunch of research based on that. So that was really, really awesome. So thank you for that. And yeah, the tip off on St. Cyprian absolutely would be good for us to do some work in. I tend not to work in the grimoire stuff all that much. So that's something where like I've got a little bit of a blind spot, but basically I love this because it's kind of saying like, hey, here's something that I would like to hear on the show, because that gives us something that we can go to. Right. Which we highly, if you have ideas for the show, things you'd love for us to do some digging on and pull stuff together for, we're always interested in that. So St. Cyprian is a big one. I'm not sure how much I can bring in, but it would be definitely cool to see what we can do with it. So, okay. Question of the episode, just before we close it all out.
Okay.
If you could own a magic bookstore / business, what would its clever pun name be? And what's your specialization?
Oh, man. I mean, it would probably be like paranormal romance, right?
Ooh, I like that. It's pretty good. It's at a bookshop?
Yes. And then I also sell like witchy things, and you can get candles along with your spicy books.
I like that. Spicy books.
So it would be like the spiced cauldron or something. That's so stupid. I don't know.
I love that.
The smoking cauldron. I don't know. I'd have to think on it more. What about you?
Smoking cauldron. I like that. It's pretty good. I don't know. Like the thing that came to mind, I mean, I would love to have a bookshop of some kind, obviously. And like, I don't know, like if there's got to be tons and tons of, I'd probably call it like pages and wands or something like that, where the pages of wands for, being kind of a magical bookstore. But then I also like, one thing I've always enjoyed is doing like handicrafts and stuff like that. So like doing like where I make brooms and stuff like that. And I call the shop something like "You Can Be Somebody" or something like that.
I like how Judika, no, not, I'm so sorry. Laura Tempest.
Zakharov, yeah.
There we go. Said, or has like there's Prince, and then like I got a tea towel at the last, so what is that called?
Yeah, Mystic South, yeah.
Thank you, Mystic South. It was Basem buddies instead of bosom buddies, and it was like little animals, friends on a broom. Yeah. And it just made me very happy. So I'm all for a Basem pun.
It's pretty good, right?
It is.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, if you have ideas for magic shop pun-based names, or more suggestions for things that you'd love for us to do on the show, or questions that you have for us about magical occupational lore, or just thoughts that you'd like to share with us, we would certainly welcome those. Please feel free to write to us at compassandkey@gmail.com or newworldwitcherypodcast@gmail.com.
Our website is newworldwitchery.com, where, like Cory said earlier in the episode, you can stream as far back as episode 1 and everything in between. And then you can leave comments too for us to read and get new ideas for episodes, because it is hard coming up with new ones after almost 15 years sometimes, y'all.
Like we're halfway to like a government retirement age.
Where's my pension?
Right. Where's my gold watch? Yeah. And if you would like to support us on Patreon, as we mentioned earlier, we are professional witches, right?
Very professional.
So you can help to make us a lot more professional if you like, by going to patreon.com/newworldwitchery and donating $1 a month, whatever you can. There are some cool perks that go with that. We have annual zines that go out to people in both digital and physical form. We have newsletters that go out every month. We usually try to release the episodes early to our Patreon supporters. Sometimes we'll have some bonus episodes out as well. So just lots and lots of little stuff that, I don't know, we try hard to make it worthwhile. So
yeah, absolutely.
And then just as a note, if you can't support us financially, we totally get that. That's perfectly fine. But if you would like to help us out in another way, you can always leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or they even have these like question and answer things that they do on Spotify now, where like you can ask a question to us through the app and it'll leave it on a specific episode and we'll be able to come and see that. And that also helps to boost other people's interactions with it. So any of that's useful. So please feel free to do that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's about it. Lane, thanks so much for clocking in with me, but I think it's time to clock out.
Sounds good to me.
Right.
I need a break.
Thanks for listening.
Be well.
New World Witchery is a production of New World Witchery Podcasts and is released under a Creative Commons Share and Share Alike license. The title and closing music for this episode is Woman Blues by Paul Avgiernos, licensed from AudioSocket.